The sound of snapping fingers never feels like an invitation. It's a percussive dismissal, a sharp crack that cuts through ambient noise and personal space. When it happens inches from your ear in a silent office, it transforms. It becomes a declaration, not of need, but of war. Hey, systems girl, Earth to whatever your title is. I didn't glance up. My attention was locked on a thermal distribution schematic for the building's core server nexus. My finger traced a fragile intersection where primary cooling met emergency backup, a delicate ecosystem of pipes and power I had designed 3 years prior. The fingers snapped again, faster now, a metronome for the impatient. I know you can hear me, the voice drawled, all false patience. It was Carter. Of course it was Carter, 27 years old, wearing a technical fabric hoodie that cost more than my first year's tuition, holding the title Director of Innovation Architecture. Translation: his mother sat on the building's ownership board. I finally turned my chair. The real architecture was about to begin. Can I help you, Carter? The network, he said, gesturing wildly toward the glass-walled conference room where 5 similarly dressed colleagues stared at frozen holographic displays. It's glitching. Our Series C presentation starts in 4 minutes. Fix it. I took a slow, measured breath. I am a 48-year-old woman in a wool blend blazer. I do not wear a lanyard. I do not carry a troubleshooting tablet. I was sitting at this auxiliary desk because the natural light was ideal for reviewing blueprints, not because I was awaiting assignment. I'm not network support, Carter, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm finalizing the infrastructure audit for your lease renewal. If you're having latency issues, you need to submit a formal ticket through the building portal. He laughed, a short, harsh bark. I don't submit tickets. I identify bottlenecks and people remove them. You're sitting here with a console. Reboot the router. Reset the signal. Just make it work. I am currently engaged, I said, turning back to my schematic, and I don't possess user-level access to your local area network. That was perhaps the incorrect thing to say, or precisely the correct one. Carter slammed his hand down on the desk. My ceramic coffee cup trembled. The low hum of the open-plan floor died instantly. The marketing team lowered their headsets. The software engineers stopped their muted typing. You know what? He shouted, his complexion flushing an uneven red. I am sick of the resistance from service staff in this building. My family's company pays a fortune for this footprint. We can't even get a stable connection. He pointed a rigid finger toward the main elevator bank. You're done. Get out. You're fired. I don't want to see you on this premises again. I'll have accounting send your final invoice. Go. I stilled. Not from fear, but from pure analytical fascination. He was terminating my contract. He genuinely believed he held that authority. I looked at him. I looked at the silent office, watching. I looked at the leather-bound folio under my hand, the one containing the unsigned master services renewal for his entire operation's life support systems. You're firing me? I asked, just to have the statement on record. I'm firing you, he spat. Get your stuff and get out, now. I stood. I didn't argue. I didn't explain that I wasn't an employee of Venture Dynamo, but the independent infrastructure steward for the entire Aurora Tower. I didn't mention that the systems girl he'd just screamed at controlled the cryptographic keys to the building's central nervous system. I simply closed my laptop. I capped my pen. I picked up my bag, leaving the renewal contract sitting, open and pristine, in the center of the reclaimed wood table. Understood, I said calmly. Good luck with your pitch, Carter. I walked to the elevator. I could feel dozens of eyes on my back. I didn't rush. I pressed the call button, waited for the chime, and stepped inside. As the doors glided shut, I saw Carter triumphantly shoulder bump a colleague, believing he'd just established dominance. He hadn't established anything. He had just severed the primary artery feeding his own venture. He just didn't know he was bleeding yet. The elevator descent was seamless. Aurora Tower is famous for its lifts. Silent, swift, serviced weekly. I know they're serviced weekly because I authorized the vendor contracts. The doors opened onto the grand lobby. I nodded to Ben, the head of security, monitoring the vast grid of surveillance feeds from his marble podium. Afternoon, Ms. Thorne. Everything calm on 44? Not anymore, Ben, I said, offering a tight, knowing smile. Not anymore. 10 minutes later, precisely enough time to walk to the artisan bakery across the plaza, order a long black, and settle at a window table, the dominoes began to fall upstairs. I didn't need to be there to see it. I had written the failure protocol. Up on the 44th floor, Martin, the building's genial, perpetually flustered facility manager, stepped out of the service elevator. He was carrying a bottle of vintage champagne and a digital signature pad. He was there to celebrate the execution of the 10-year premium amenities extension, a deal I had spent 8 months negotiating with the firm's actual CFO, Carter's mother. Martin walked into the glass conference room. He saw my abandoned folio. He saw Carter and his team, still buzzing with adversarial adrenaline. "Gentlemen," Martin boomed, forcing joviality. "Where's our star of the hour? We have champagne to pop. We need Alara's signature to lock in your rates for the decade." Carter spun, annoyed. "Who?" "Ilara Thorne. She said she'd be set up right here. We have to finalize the infrastructure rider by 5 p.m., or the grandfather clause on your power allocation expires." Carter scoffed, taking a swig of an organic energy drink. "Oh, her. The consultant with the attitude. Yeah, I terminated her." The room didn't go quiet. It crystallized. Martin's smile shattered. You did what?" "I fired her. She was obstructive. Couldn't perform a basic network reset. Mouthed off. So I told her to leave." Carter shrugged. "You're welcome. We need vendors who actually deliver." Martin stared. He stared at the empty chair. He stared at the unsigned contract. "Carter," he whispered. Then his voice rose an octave in panic. "Ilara isn't a vendor. She's not a contractor." He leaned in, desperate. "She is the infrastructure steward. She owns the rights to the dark fiber line you use. She licenses the dedicated HVAC loop for your server farm. She holds the master security certificate for this floor. I just coordinate the waste disposal." Carter's smug expression flickered. He reached out and flipped open the folio. There, on the first page, in elegant font, Aurora Tower, Master Services and Amenities License, prepared by Ilara Thorne, Steward. A small, weak O escaped his lips. "She just left?" Martin asked, gripping the table's edge. "She said anything when she went?" "She said, 'Understood.'" Martin closed his eyes, as if in pain. "She accepted the termination of negotiations. Carter, you didn't fire a technician. You just legally revoked your own license to operate in this building." Down at street level, my phone vibrated once. A text from Martin. "Please tell me this isn't true." I took a sip of my coffee. I didn't reply. The door had been shut. Now it was time to turn the key. My real office isn't on a prestige floor. It's on level B2, behind 2 unmarked steel doors, adjacent to the low-frequency hum of the main electrical transformers. It's cool, quiet, and smells of static and old parchment. I sat at my command desk, a vast surface of polished steel illuminated by the glow of 6 integrated monitors. I didn't feel rage. Rage is a volatile, unproductive fuel. What I felt was a profound, crystalline obligation to the letter of our agreement. Carter had been unequivocal. He did not want my services. As a professional bound by contractual ethics, I was required to respect his client-side directive. I pulled the Venture Dynamo master file from the encrypted server. It was 4 inches thick and hard copy. I navigated directly to Appendix D, Conditional Amenities and Revocable Privileges. Most tenants believe leasing a floor grants them everything: walls, windows, air. But in a smart tower like Aurora, the base rent covers 4 walls and a ceiling. Everything else, the quantum-secured data trunk, the sub-zero server cooling, the biometric elevators, are licensed add-ons, subscriptions to the building's core utilities. Carter had just canceled his subscription. I accessed the building management interface. My authorization level is root, absolute. Step 1, priority elevator access. Venture Dynamo paid a 300% premium for VIP lift service, guaranteeing a car would prioritize their floor call within 15 seconds. Contract status, negotiation terminated by tenant rep. I toggled the setting from priority to standard. Now their employees would queue with the accountancy firm on 12 and the dental clinic on 28. Step 2. Logistics Bay Authorization. They had a shipment of prototype hardware arriving Wednesday. I had approved the docking schedule. Access to the reinforced freight elevator requires a time-coded digital key issued by my office. I revoked the key. When that truck arrived, they'd be hauling heavy crates up 44 flights of emergency stairs. Step 3. Thermal regulation. This was the core. The building's central system maintains a pleasant 72 degrees. A data hub, however, requires a dedicated, high-capacity chilled glycol loop to prevent meltdown. That loop is not part of the base lease. It is a licensed asset owned by the stewardship. I called up the environmental controls. The flow valve to Suite 4400 was marked High Priority, Subsidized Rate. I entered a new command: Revert to Base Building Ambient. The pneumatic actuators on the roof would begin their slow, irrevocable closure. Within 2 hours, their server room would become a tropical greenhouse for sensitive electronics. I wasn't committing sabotage. I was performing a contractual compliance action. I was simply ceasing to provide services for which there was no longer a valid agreement. My dedicated line rang. Only 4 people had this number. It was Anya, the tower's chief legal counsel. Ilara, Martin is having a pulmonary event in my doorway. The word fired was used. Tell me he's misunderstood. He hasn't, I said, watching the temperature gauge for 4,400 tick upward by a degree. The tenant representative publicly terminated our relationship and ordered me off the premises, witnessed by his full staff. A long sigh. And your response? I am adhering to the termination. I'm revoking all uncontracted amenity access. I cannot assume liability for systems operating without a signed service waiver, Anya. The insurance mandates are clear. I know the mandates, she said, her voice tight. I'm not asking for a halt. I'm asking for a prognosis. How symptomatic will the tenant become? My cursor hovered over the panel for the smart water systems. I hope they've stocked bottled water. The filtered dispensers on their floor run through my purification subsystem. Understood, Anya said, and I could hear the faint scratch of her pen. I'll draft the liability deflection notice. Proceed as required. I pressed enter. The elegance of infrastructure is its invisibility. When functional, it is physics. It is expectation. A door opens, air cools, light shines. You assume these are natural laws, not services rendered under a fee schedule. On the 44th floor, the laws of physics were being quietly, legally rewritten. It began subtly. At 3:20 p.m., the electrochromic glass in the executive sanctum, which could frost to total opacity, defaulted to permanent transparency. Carter's frantic private calls to his mother became a live, silent film for the entire staff. Then, the ultrasonic door locks separating the developer bullpen from the leadership wing disengaged. They didn't lock shut, a fire hazard. They defaulted to ajar. The sanctum's soundproofing vanished, flooded by the cacophony of sales calls and ping-pong tables. But the true alert flashed at 4:55 p.m. My dashboard, which mirrors all critical tenant tickets, lit up in sequence. Alert, number 441, server array temperature threshold exceeded, 82 degree Nerf. Alert, number 442, hygienic suite access, denied, biometric failure. Alert, number 443, network performance critical, packet loss, 68%. He'd called me systems girl. He never asked what system I actually governed. 11:08 p.m., 12/17/2025. Qureshi. My personal email chimed. The sender, carter.venture.dynamo. Subject, urgent issue. Body, climate system failed and doors are malfunctioning. Address immediately. Need resolution, EOD. No acknowledgement, no apology. Just a directive. He still perceived me as a service ticket. I archived the email into a folder labeled Evidence, Unauthorized Post-Termination Requests. My phone buzzed. Martin whispering. Ilara. He's in the atrium screaming that the building is defective. He's trying to get the junior engineer to physically bypass the thermostat panel. Jamal can't bypass it, Martin. It's hardware locked to the leaseholder's cryptographic key. I know that. He doesn't. He's threatening litigation for breach of implied warranty of habitability. The lease, I said calmly, warrants a habitable office environment between 65 and 78 degrees. It does not warrant specific cooling for a high-density computing facility. That was a licensed amenity, the license he voided. He's demanding a meeting with you. Inform him that as a terminated non-employee, I am not authorized to re-enter the premises under the building's liability insurance. He's going to call the CFO his mother. I'm anticipating that. The server room temperature hit 86 degrees. The machines began autonomously throttling their processors, slowing to a lethargic crawl to avoid suicide. I had a prior engagement that evening, a dinner with Silas Grant, CEO of Nodal Prime, Venture Dynamo's most aggressive competitor. They had been trying to secure a flagship presence in Aurora Tower for 18 months. Ilara, Silas said, rising as I approached the table. This is a surprise. Is everything aligned with the infrastructure availability study? Everything has been reconfigured, Silas, I said, taking my seat. I placed a single, slim folder between us. A significant portfolio of premium infrastructure licenses has just become available. Immediate activation. It includes a dedicated low-latency fiber optic ring, a guaranteed 10 kilowatt thermal dissipation capacity, and platinum-level elevator priority. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with instant comprehension. I was under the impression Venture Dynamo had that capacity secured indefinitely. Their representative opted for early contract relinquishment, I said, selecting my words with surgical care. The assets are now unencumbered. What's the activation timeline? I can reroute the primary data conduit to your provisional space on the 30th floor in approximately 12 minutes, pending your signature. He didn't smile. He nodded, the gesture of a chess player spotting checkmate. If you can bring that capacity online by tomorrow morning, I will execute a 7-year master license before the dessert menu arrives. The agreement is here. The bandwidth will be live before the entree. We signed. As I slotted my pen back into my bag, my tablet pulsed. A security alert. Unauthorized physical access attempt. Main electrical closet, floor 44. Carter was now trying to play electrician, searching for a mythical main breaker. Everything secure? Silas asked. A trivial anomaly in an older subsystem, I replied. I had just sold Carter's operational spine to his arch-rival. The beautiful part, the fiber line passed through a vertical conduit that ran directly through the ceiling of his own server room. He would now work directly beneath the torrent of data that used to be his, listening to the faint hum of its passage, powering his competition. The following Monday, the final mechanism engaged. Employee keycard access, which synced with my authorization server every 48 hours, failed to update. At 8:15 a.m., 40 Venture Dynamo staff members were stranded in the lobby, swiping dead plastic against unresponsive readers. IR 11:08 p.m., 12:17, 20:25. Qureshi. The conclusion was both quiet and total. Venture Dynamo broke their core lease, incurring a penalty that nearly doubled their final invoice. Silas Grant and Nodal Prime moved into the 44th floor 8 weeks later. They are impeccable tenants. They file requests through the proper channels. They express gratitude. Last quarter, they brought a curated gift basket to the security team. The building ownership committee, pleased with the increased revenue from the new stable tenant, granted my stewardship a significant performance bonus. Sometimes, late in the evening when the tower is mostly asleep, I'll sit in my subterranean office and listen to the steady rhythmic hum of the infrastructure. It's the sound of order, of systems functioning as designed. It's the sound of competence quietly prevailing. This is the fundamental lesson, the one they never teach in business school. True power doesn't announce itself with snaps or shouts. It flows silently, like electricity through a conduit, like data through a fiber. It is present in the design, in the protocols, in the unbreakable logic of an agreement. The loudest person in the room is often just a tenant in a house whose foundation they've never bothered to understand. If this story of quiet strategy and decisive consequence resonated with you, if you value the narrative of the prepared mind over the arrogant voice, then I have a simple, powerful request for you. That request is your enter key. Please tap the like button. That single click is a vital signal. It tells the platform's algorithm that content with depth, with patience, with real-world stakes, has value. It helps this channel, Winds of Thought, reach others who prefer substance over bluster. And if you want to ensure you don't miss our next exploration into the unseen architectures of power, strategy, and human dynamics, click subscribe. It's a free, instant way to support this work and join a community that thinks before it speaks. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your support. This is Winds of Thought. Until next time, look deeper. The most important systems are always the ones you don't see.